Hey everyone, today I'm going to try and attempt to explain how some of the mechanics behind my Shulker mob work, since a lot of you requested a video on how the projectile tracking, for example, worked. So I'm going to do a whole video sort of explaining more or less everything about the Shulker mob. But before I go into any of that, I wanted to firstly say a big thank you to Dragnoz for doing a showcase video, because it's just really motivating to hear that someone who's so well known for creating awesome maps and awesome command block things has actually been impressed by something that you've done. So, and also the way that he actually left credit, like with actual links in the video itself and mentioning my name, things like that. It's just really nice to see. Like, I know there's been a lot of disagreement recently, or tension in between content creators and showcases, mainly over crediting. But I think if people credited like Dragnoz did in his video, then the sort of relationship between content creators and showcases would just be a lot nicer. But anyway, let's get on to how the actual mob works now. So to spawn the mob in, you have a bat egg that's called Shulker, so that when you right click with this egg, it will spawn a bat that's named Shulker. And so that bat will then execute all of these commands here. For those of you who don't know, I like to sort of label the sort of larger command block creations with carpets, and that sort of just makes it easier for me to identify which parts of the sort of contraption do what things. So like, I know the white things sort of handle spawning things, the green things handle levitation, things like that. I don't know what the command actually is, but it means I know sort of what it's linked with. But anyway, so the sort of first command that it does, so we execute from the bat named Shulker. It summons an armor stand, custom name SH1, with stone slab in the head slot, so that's the lower part of the shell. Then this next one summons the custom head, so that's the middle part. And I actually use a website called Quality Heads. I'll leave a link to it in the description, but it's really cool. There's like a whole sort of library of heads, and you just click on the head you want, and it copies the give command to your clipboard, so you can really easily include that into your command block things. So that does the middle part, and then the top part. And then we have summoning the slime, and that acts as the actual hitbox. So if I spawn one in, go into Game of 3, you can see there's a slime in the middle here, of size 1. So not the smallest size, the size 0 is actually the smallest. But that acts as the hitbox and also manages the actual sort of damage state of the Shulker. I'll sort of explain that in a second. So we have invisibility for the slime, and sort of initializing the scoreboard for whether the shell is open or closed. And then it teleports the bat downwards by 20 blocks and then kills the bat. And the reason it does the teleporting downwards is just to make it so the smoke particles when a mob dies aren't visible when spawning in. So next there's the damage state of the mob, and that's handled by these grey ones here. So I have a scoreboard objective called Shulk Hit, and that's adding one. So every time that the slime matches this MBT data tag, hurt time 10s. So basically, whenever it's hit, it gets one score added to the Shulk Hit objective. So let's try and demonstrate that now. If I just kill this one and spawn a new one in, and do scored objectives, set display sidebar, Shulk Hit. So when I hit it once, it gets 1. When I hit it again, it's 2 and 3. 3 doesn't do anything because I kind of sort of ran out of slabs I wanted to do. So it just changes the entity data of anything which matches that score to the stone slab with a specific damage value. So that's for the stone brick slabs, that's for the top shell, bottom shell, and then the cobble top shell and bottom shell. So that's how that works. So next up we have the eye tracking of the shulker, and that's because I wanted the sort of eye to turn, or the head to turn and face you, so it actually looked like the projectile was coming out of its like eye or face sort of thing, rather than just coming out of it from anywhere. So this works by sort of testing for a player within volumes. So you can see when I'm in the different areas, it tends to face me. If I'm in this middle bit where it's sort of not tracking me, then it doesn't turn. But as soon as I step into here, it sort of turns around to face me. And I've kind of simplified it a bit here. It's not actually the shulker that's testing for the player. It's actually the player which is then teleporting the shulker if it's in a specific volume. So I have these 4 commands here for the 4 different directions. So that's all that's really required for that. So if I go inside this, it does look a bit complicated and messy, but essentially I am executing from all players, not from their exact position, but from different coordinates relative to that. So for example, if I get out, say, redstone block, so I wouldn't be executing from the player's position, I'd be executing from say over here, for example. And that's because I'm using the dx, dy, and dz volume sort of arguments in the target selector. And since they're all positive numbers, they'll be going in the positive direction. So if I executed it from the player, it would only detect sort of in sort of this area, and obviously that's not very helpful. But with this, it detects in sort of this area like this. So it's a lot more helpful sort of from the player's perspective. And now we come to the longest thing that took me to make. The sort of shulker actually took me like maybe an hour or so to set up, and the projectiles took at least 2 or 3 hours on just alone, because I tried so many different things and things just didn't work as well as I wanted them to. I'm still not totally happy with the way that the projectiles work at the moment, but they seem to work a lot better than any of the other attempts that I made, so I'll stick with them for now. And since it's not really a map or anything, it doesn't matter if they're not perfect and if they're a bit buggy. So first of all, I want to talk about how to make the actual projectile travel along the sort of grid lines of the blocks, because the projectiles can't travel like wherever they want. They're restricted to sort of the sort of central parts of the blocks. They travel along sort of straight lines towards the player. And the way that I've done this is actually use a scored objective. Let's see if I can find it. Shulk shot time. The reason it's SH instead of the whole word shulk is because I kept spelling it like shelk, because shell lurker. I don't know, so I figured it would be best to just shorten it to SH. So we have a scored objective called shulk shot time, and that sort of keeps track of where the projectile is in relation to the blocks. So the projectiles actually travel at 0.2 blocks a second, not a second, a tick. So in 5 ticks, it will travel a whole block. And so what I've actually managed to do is that every 5 ticks, the projectile will check its sort of direction, whether it needs to change direction or anything. So only when it's in the center of a block will it actually change direction. So that's how the sort of that bit of the tracking works. And then comes the sort of more wishy-washy stuff, really, because it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to work. Oh, that bit's glitched. But this was my original idea, similar to, if you watched my grappling hook video, it's similar to how that works. So this is the projectile in the middle here. It's not on this armor stand, it's actually invisible. So, but you have 6 armor stands around it in each of the directions. You have the positive X, positive Z, negative Z, and positive Y, negative Y. And the theory I had was I'd just be able to execute from the player /kill at E. I've actually named them, I think it was demo stand, and actually kill all of them except 1, so count equals 5, but I'd kill all of them except the closest one, so I do C equals -5, so that selects the 5 furthest away things, and it'll leave you with just the closest one. And then, so obviously with that, you could then specify, oh, the projectile needs to travel in that direction. But this didn't work. Mainly because if you have multiple projectiles, it just completely messes up. I should have thought about that in the beginning, but I didn't. So then I tried a few other things and nothing seemed to work. And then I realized I could actually come back to the same sort of basic principle that I used for the eye in the middle to actually make the projectiles work. So say this is the player here. We've actually got volumes. They're slightly larger than this, but I kind of ran out of room because I didn't want to overlap that. But we have volumes here, and when the projectile actually crosses inside this volume, its scoreboard objective for direction is changed to face the player. So when it walks into this, it'll turn to face there. There are a bit of overlapping regions as well, so it can be a bit buggy, but they're sort of more at closer range where it doesn't really matter because the thing hits you anyway. So I'll try and provide a bit of a demonstration, I suppose. Let me turn it on first. I think it's the next one. So I turn this off for now, but if I get rid of that A, now they can shoot projectiles. So if I'll just put one there. So you can see if I travel along here, you can imagine that there's the red thing here, crosses over that red area, and then actually starts teleporting towards me. And unless you can travel extremely far away in that sort of amount of time that it's trying to track you in, then it'll continue to track you. And now obviously I haven't included the up or down directions with this, and that's because I couldn't get it to work properly without it just staying in one direction, sort of traveling up and down, and it would just lose you completely. So I sort of compromised a little bit and made it so it tests a massive area above you, and if it's actually above you, it just teleports upwards. It doesn't actually have a scored objective for that or anything like the 4 directions do. It just teleports up or down. So that part isn't necessarily... So yeah, it didn't track me properly there. So you can see it's still a bit buggy, but that part is sort of a compromise. But I think it works well enough for the sort of concept that I'm trying to demonstrate here. So you can see that it definitely does track along the middle of the blocks using the... I'll try and show that actually if I can do scored objectives, set display sidebar, shot time. You'll see the numbers don't go up to 5. I think they go up to 7. And that's mainly because there's something like 2 ticks between when the projectile is actually spawned and when it actually receives the sort of when it actually starts teleporting. It's kind of complicated to explain that part, but I just figured that out through trial and error because it wasn't in the center of the block, so I sort of offset it and it appeared to work fine. So now on to the actual levitating part. And this is... I asked about it on Twitter because I wasn't sure how to do this. I'll try and provide a bit of an example. What's the easiest way to do this? Let's just make an objective real quick. add lev test dummy. And so what I'm going to do is do TP at a score lev test min equals 1. We'll say 0.5 blocks up, and then scoreboard players remove at a score lev test min equals 1 lev test 1. Hopefully this doesn't mess up. I'm going to now set my score players set Samasaurus lev test 15. Okay, so yeah, that did work. So if I'm in game mode 1, where I'm just constantly staying still, I don't have a downwards motion, then you can see that works fine. But if I'm in game mode 0, I'm not flying or whatever, I sort of constantly have a downwards momentum trying to bring me to the ground. So if I do that again, you can see it just glitches all over the place, and you can see at the end I sort of teleport upwards, and it just looks, it doesn't look great. So I sort of try to think about ways I could sort of get around this problem, and I came up with using an actual armor stand and teleporting the player to that armor stand. And that worked a lot smoother. The only problem then was that I'd always be facing the direction that the armor stand would be facing. So say I was facing this way to begin with, and the projectile hit me, I'd instantly teleport that way and sort of float upwards. So it's a bit sort of counterintuitive here, but basically when it hits you, you get a lev score of 15. So you'll float upwards for 15 ticks, and it removes lev 1 every tick back down to 0. And so what it does is it executes from you if you have a lev score. It summons an armor stand called lev, and then it, from that armor stand, it teleports itself to you, so it's then facing the same direction as you. So it's in the same sort of space as you are. Then it teleports upwards 0.2 blocks, and then it teleports you to the armor stand. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of funny how that works, but it's just a lot smoother, and then it just kills the armor stand. So it's just a lot smoother in the way that it teleports you upwards, and it sort of faces where you face. It is a bit kind of glitchy if you try and turn around though, because it's still trying to teleport to where you are. So anyway, that's it for the sort of Shulker explanation. I hope I explained it well enough for you guys to sort of understand at least some of what's going on. And I also wanted to talk very quickly about the game jam that's happening this weekend. I think it's something like 20 hours from now, so very soon. But basically the game jam, I'll leave a link to it in the description, but you have 72 hours to make a game totally from scratch. And the theme for the game jam will only be announced at the start of the game jam, so you can't really prepare at all really in advance. But I'm going to be participating in that with a couple of my friends, and I'll try and do some sort of development. I'll record some videos of the development and post it after the game jam, as well as our finished game. I'll leave a link to that once we've finished it. Yeah, it would be cool to see some of you guys also participating. So if you're into making games, or even you just want to make your first game, then it's a really cool opportunity. And it's actually being sort of run by PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and the actual website GameJolt. And so I think it's just a really cool opportunity. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.